Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is where I get to chat with artists that I've connected with over the years. And today we're going to be doing a classic pop trivia episode featuring legendary Keith Hampshire. Keith, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. Good to be here. Good to be anywhere. My
I agree. Yeah, so Keith, you had a couple of hits of your own, fairly big hits. You were the one who made the first cut as the deepest, a hit in Canada initially, well before Rod Stewart did it, and then you had daytime, nighttime, and all of a sudden, we're watching you on TV. So Keith
yeah.
Hampshire's Music Machine was a big hit by me, or with me and my peers. So, do you have some memories that you'd like to share in this trivia vein about the show?
Well, sure. The first year I was fortunate. I mean, I've been lucky all my life. First year, our house band was Dr. Music, Doug Riley and Dr. Music. So it was the music was incredible, and everybody wanted to be on the show. I mean, as far as recording artists were concerned. So we had quite a variety and quite a selection. Now, in all, we did 50 shows, 26 the first year and 24 the second year, which was quite amazing because I don't think the CBC knew what they had. And the first year it was called just Music Machine. Second year I got my lawyer involved, and I said, I think I want my name on this thing. So it became Keith Hampshire's Music Machine the second year. And I think the second year I also got to keep the wardrobe. Yeah, that was it. Anyway, the first year we had Valdi from the West Coast. He was fabulous. What a great man. And we had April Wine, Ian Thomas. I remember Ian was on the show. Cal Dodd came on. Funny little thing. Those were the days of the platform heels and bell bottom pants with a big cuff. Yeah, it didn't last very long, but I remember Cal came on the show and he sang a song called "Power to All My Friends," which was a big hit for Cliff Richard in England. Anyway, he came out and he sat on a stool and sang the song. And I came out afterwards and said, "Yeah, thanks, great, Cal, thanks very much." Da 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 da. And he stood up and I went, "Oh, your fly's open." So he'd done the whole song with his fly open, and we went back and checked the tape, and nobody could tell, so it was all right. We kept what we had. I remember that one. Who else was on the
Now,
first
was it
year?
the original lineup of April Wine that would have been on your show
I would think so. Yeah, it
with
was
the Henman brothers? And yeah,
73.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. They were on both years. They were on the first year and the second year. So they were one of the only acts that went from one year to the next that we had back. Um, I I don't remember Lighthouse. I remember David Clayton Thomas came on the show. I don't remember what he did. It was a very long time ago,
It was, yeah.
and there were so many shows, and we were cranking them out, week after week after week.
Well, there are
And
so many artists from back in the day that owe your show a lot, in terms of the exposure they got from being on Keith Hampshire's Music Machine. I mean, I loved watching bands like the Stampeders, for example, and I
oh yeah,
think I think they would have been on with probably "Carry Me," um, back in the day, maybe "Wild Eyes."
Wild Eyes, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I knew those guys in Calgary, of course, because I'm originally from Calgary, and they were originally a six-man group, and they played at a club that was run by a local disc jockey. His name was Howie Levant, and the club was called the Conquistador. And of course, there was no drinking; it was strictly soda pop and French chips, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, they were the house band, and that's where they sort of got their together, and then they came east and decided that maybe six wasn't such a good idea because when you got six guys, you got to feed and house and keep busy. It wasn't really quite. Uh, I mean, had they hit the big time as six guys, it would have been different, but they didn't. So when they pared down to three, that's when they were a lean, mean music machine.
That was the chemistry that made them.
Yeah,
I spoke to Kim Burley a few years ago, I guess, on this show about their trip east. I also spoke to Ronnie King, and he was very entertaining to
oh,
speak
he
to.
is. What a
Uh,
great guy.
but
Arnie.
I remember Kim was saying that they drove east in an old used Cadillac with their manager Mel Shaw and his wife and kids, and the
There's
three
six of them.
six of them in the van, and there was gas vapors and all this stuff. And they
Can you
said they
imagine?
were told that this gig in North Bay, Ontario, was at a resort. It was the Blue Spruce Hotel up on Highway 11 North. And it was, and I grew up in North Bay. I was just a little kid when they played at the Blue Spruce. But I didn't know that North Bay at the time was a dry town when I was a kid.
Oh,
So everybody used to fly up the highway. Just outside the city limits was the Blue Spruce Hotel, and that place would have been packed every night. So that made for quite the beginning for the Stampeders. But yeah, can you imagine being in that long black Cadillac with all those kids and the smoke and and the Ronnie King? Oh boy. Oh
yeah, yeah.
man.
So his brother, I think his brother called himself Van or something, and
Yes.
he was one of the lead singers. And then
Yeah.
there was another guy named Al. Well, actually, Kim's brother Al, and he actually worked at the television station. I was hired as a television cameraman apprentice at CFC and television and radio in Calgary. And Kim's brother Al was a videotape operator, so he ran all the videotape machines. So that's where I first met Al, and he was one of the first ones to drop out of the band when they came east. He went back to videotape operating, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
it's interesting, what happens out on the road. That's for sure.
yeah, I can't. Who else did we have on the show? Boy, I wish I had the list in front of me. Um,
Well, Flood would
mm,
have been interesting, I think.
yeah, Flood
Greg
came on the
Godovitz and
show, and I think they did Cousin Mary.
yeah.
I think they did Cousin Mary. I think that's the one that was happening at the time. I really don't remember much about their performance. I do know that Edmund Pilling, the brother of Brian, who was the brains behind Flood, lives up the road in a seniors park, and he's not very well. So
Oh.
I hope Edmund takes care of himself. Um,
Well, he was
and
quite the physical presence back in the day. I know Greg
oh,
Godovitz
for
told me
sure.
some stories
Yeah,
about
yeah. Well, of
how
course, Greg was.
if somebody was after Greg, he didn't want to have Ed step in, you
No,
know.
no, because Ed was a big, tall, good-looking blonde Adonis, and Greg was just a tiny little bass player, you know. No
Oh,
mess with it.
now Lighthouse. That would have been interesting because that was a big band, and I can just
We were
imagine
a
back
big
in the
band.
early '70s how it would have been for the engineers in the studio to make sure everything was mic'd just so and captured in a good way.
Well, a lot of the times, and I'm not sure if it was all the times, but many times, what would happen is the band or the guests would bring a band track, which would be everything except the vocals and the solo. So they would do the vocals live and then a guitar solo or keyboard solo or sax solo or whatever. They do that live, but everything else was pre-recorded. So they didn't have to do a great deal of mic setup on the bigger bands, you
Well, that
know?
explains it.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
did they have on your show? Did they have marks on the floor for the artists to stay on their mark?
Well, to tell you, well, the artists on the show were placed on a pedestal,
Okay.
if you will, or a small stage,
Yeah.
and that's where they stayed. I mean, basically, they weren't. I'm trying to think about how the show was set up. I mean, I had a bigger stage, and when I and um, uh, the singing group performed our numbers, we'd be on the big stage. But generally, the guests had the smaller stage. We had Rush, we had Klaatu, we had um,
Now with Klaatu, that's an interesting story. I know you've told me before that after you had Klaatu on the show, and I think they did California Jam on your
yeah,
show,
yeah.
and then isn't it that Terry Draper reached out to you and said, "Hey, I live in the neighborhood," something to that effect, and then you
Well,
guys,
we reconnected many, 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 many years later in Florida because we were both wintering in Florida down in Tampa, Clearwater area. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, I'm just down the road. Why don't we get together for a beer?" So I met him at a karaoke bar, and we had a beer, and we got along great. And because Terry was a fabulous guy, and we started a mutual admiration society. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So
yeah, I remember a few years ago when I was asked to document Al Mayer's celebration of life at Roy Thompson Hall. And one of the first people I saw out on the balcony or on the patio was Terry. And I remember seeing on Facebook that you said you were going to be there. And so I asked Terry, "Hey, have you seen Keith Hampshire?" And he said, "Well, he should be around here somewhere. He's my ride."
yeah,
So
yeah, I was there. I was there.
yeah,
Al and I, Al and I went back a very long way. Al was originally, I think he was, I don't know if he was promo manager, but I know that he was certainly Ontario promo manager for Apex Records, which was, Ricky Nelson and Brenda Lee and a lot of the earlier groups. And then he went on to uh, I think that from oh yeah, United Artists was one of the labels that he repped, and from the United Artists thing, he became Gordon Lightfoot's manager, and he started something called Early Morning Productions, and they had an office on Davenport in Toronto, and I used to drop in there every so often. Never saw Gordy,
well,
but I went to see Al.
do you remember Robbie Lane?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
Robbie.
sure.
I spoke to Robbie on this show a few years ago, and he was talking about Gordon Lightfoot and how they were good friends and so on. I said, "Well, I'd love to speak to Gordon Lightfoot." So he gave me the contact information for Early Morning Productions, and Gordon was never around. He was
No,
I could not connect with him. He was a very
oh,
busy man. Yeah.
yeah. So I like to think that Jason Hoover, that's the one I was thinking of. We even had Jason Hoover from Vancouver come in and do a guest spot on one of the shows. He was terrific. What a great singer. I wish we had been more national in our scope and were able had a big enough budget that we could bring groups in from across the country. As it was, we could only basically use groups that were in the Toronto area. um, i I like to think that we featured most of the up and coming groups that were making records and were being listened to on the radio and maybe needed a bit of a boost. So I was pretty instrumental, I suppose, in who we had as guests on the show. They'd come to me and say, "What about so and so and so and so?" I don't know. Let's get Copper Penny. They've got a great record. And I guess it's because of my background as a disc jockey that I was more in
In tune.
tune with
Yeah.
commercial pop music, which was what the show was supposed to be.
Right. Now, you kind of expressed some regret at not being more of a nationally spread show, but everybody went to Toronto back in the day. Like I know when I first started getting serious about my music, I felt like nothing's happening in North Bay. You know, you're not going to get on the CBC in North Bay, yeah,
Uh-huh.
for example. So we all went to Toronto and or Montreal or Vancouver, but I think Toronto was really the hotspot in the early 70s, especially for artists.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and thanks to Pierre Juno and the Canadian content regulations, all of a sudden there were recording studios that were world class caliber, and many recordings um, happened in Toronto that were as good as anywhere in the world. Whereas before then, they were a little uh, they weren't quite there. I know Duff Roman was a disc jockey and has been a great force in the Canadian music industry, and as a disc jockey and a producer and this, that, and the other. And he produced David Clayton Thomas and quite a few other artists in the early days. And my God, he was a good record producer. His stuff, considering the equipment that he was working with, was really top notch. It really was. So I got kudos to Duff Roman for his production skills. He had good ears.
And you know, a good producer makes all the difference in the world. I mean, I feel like I'm very fortunate with the producer that I have today, because before I connected with Darren, who Morrison, who produces my stuff, I didn't have anybody who really cared, and they didn't seem to understand what I was about, you know.
Oh yeah,
And it's if you get somebody like a Daniel Lanois, you know, for example, uh,
exactly.
behind you, and you know, they're just if you watch somebody like that in the studio, they're a part of it, you know, and they know exactly what tone of paint you need to put on that palette, you know, to make the painting what it's supposed to be, if that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
No, no, it does. It does. I was very fortunate in that I was introduced to Bill Meisner, who was my producer, and Bill Meisner was the original lead singer with the Poppers with Skip Prokop, and he and Skip had a falling out because Skip wanted to go more psychedelic, and Billy was more pop commercial oriented. So Bill left the band and got involved at our RCA at the new RCA studios in Toronto and was their resident creative director slash producer slash go-to guy. And so anyway, I became good friends with Scott Richards, who was the original bass player with David Clayton Thomas and the Shays. And anyway, Scott said to me one day, he said, "You know, you're a singer. For God's sake, you should be making records." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, sure. That'd be great." He said, "No, no, really." He says, "There's someone I want you to meet." So he took me down and he introduced me to Bill Meisner at RCA because at the time, Scott was the Ontario promotion manager for RCA Records. And Bill and I got along like a house of fire. And consequently, Bill turned out to, I mean, Bill was a great producer. And when people say, well, you know, you had some great records. And I said, yes, I did have some great records. And it's because A, I had a great producer. B, I had a great engineer. C, I was working in a great studio. D, it was just at the right time that I could do the songs that I wanted to do. And you know, it's those are all of those things have to be in place. And you know, we brought out Big Time Operator, and for example, it was my third single on A&M, and we pulled out all the stops. I went to New York City and mixed it with the great Phil Ramone at A&R Studios, thanks to Jerry LaCourcier, the boss of A&M Records at the time, and he okayed us to go to New York. So Bill Meisner, myself, and our engineer Hayward Parrott, and I, the three of us, flew to New York and had an all-night session with Phil Ramone at A&R, and he's the one that mixed Big Time Operator for us. And A&M really believed in that record, but it was just the wrong song at the wrong time. I mean, it did well in Canada because it was coming on the heels of First Cut is the Deepest, but it didn't pop in the States like they thought it would. So,
Now, you and I talked a little while ago about First Cut is the Deepest, and um, I remember asking you if you added an extra line because Rod Stewart and the Sheryl Crow version aren't the same as what your version is. And then I ended up doing my own version that was more like the Rod Stewart and Sheryl Crow version. But uh, tell me again what the proper arrangement was
well,
there.
the original song is which is the one I heard, which was by Cat Stevens, and he's the one that wrote it. Has three lines in the chorus. When it comes to being lucky, she's first. When it comes to being loved, she's worst. But when it comes to loving me, she's first. I think those are the three lines. And, that's the way I heard it from Cat Stevens. And then it was a big hit in England for a girl named P.P. Arnold, who was originally with Ike and Tina Turner in the Ikettes. And she had a hit in England with it. And but for some reason it had never been released or wasn't released properly or wasn't the right record at the right time or something. So that's when I decided to do my version of it. And so I just did the original song. It was I don't know why Rod Stewart dropped that line. I don't know. It makes no
Was it
sense to me.
was that Doug Riley and Dr. Music that you had on your recording?
Um, I don't think Doug was on that. No, Doug wasn't on that one.
Okay.
Doug was involved in Big Time Operator.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now I know when you started with the Music Machine, before it was Keith Hampshire's Music Machine, Doug Riley was the musical arranger for that
the first
with
year. Yeah, the
Dr.
first
Music,
26 shows.
and the vocal group was the Soul Company. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They called themselves Soul Company.
Okay.
Diane Brooks, Terry Black, um, Sharon Lee Williams, Wayne St. John, and Rhonda Silver. So they were the five the backing vocalists.
Now, what
Yeah,
happened that in the second year you had a different musical arranger, and so it was the second year was Eric Robertson and Local 149, and then the vocal group was the Liberation.
yeah. Um, well, at the end of the first year, when we got renewed, we went, ho, ho, they like us. They really like us. We're going to do it again. So hello, grandfather. Oh, it's 12 o'clock apparently. He'll be done in a minute.
Yeah.
Hurry up, granddad. Let's go. Oh, there he goes. He's done.
Yeah.
So the first year was Dr. Riley and Dr. Music, Doug Riley. And at the end of the first year, when they renewed us for the second year, we were surprised because we didn't think the CBC even knew we existed. Because even though it was supposedly a national show, there were many CBC stations that didn't have to pick up the show. They could play it or they couldn't play it. They didn't. It wasn't imperative. So there were many markets that never played it. For example, in Calgary, the local CBC affiliate was maybe CFAC TV. Can't remember exactly. Anyway, they decided not to pick it up. So it never played in Calgary, Alberta. The show never showed in Calgary, which is a major city. You'd think they would have been on it, but they weren't. And so there were many cities like that weren't on it. So anyway, getting back to your question, sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. And when they picked us up for the second year, the producers Gary Ferrier and Aubrey Tadman came to me and said, "Listen, are there any changes you'd like to make?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like it to be called Keith Hampshire's Music Machine." And they said, "Well, I think we can do that." And I'd like to keep some of the clothes. Well, okay, we can do that. And they said, "Anything else?" And I said, "Well, I have a problem with one of the singers. Um, they're a little bit of a downer. And so every time I try and do something funky or creative or whatever, they sort of look at me like, "Who are you trying to kid?" sort of thing, and it really sort of put a damper on the whole thing for me. Um, and also when Dr. Music and Doug were given a solo spot on the show, Doug was really into jazz. So he would play something very jazzy. And the producer said, "This ain't a jazz show. This is a pop music show. This is for teenagers, and they're not into jazz." So they went to Doug and they said, "Listen, Doug, we'd love you to come back, but A, you got to stop with the jazz, and B, we'd really appreciate it if that singer wasn't involved." And he said, "Well, if the singer is not involved, I'm not involved." And he backed out.
That's interesting, the politics, and I
Yeah,
mean,
the politics.
I'm just kind of fascinated by how similar being on the road is to being on a TV show, because I found like I was recruited into a band in the mid 80s that turned out to be not a really good choice for me. Like we just didn't get along, but I didn't know until we got out on the road, and
Yeah.
we actually got into the thick of it. And then I realized that, yeah,
Well, this
maybe,
is not for me. I'm not having a good time.
yeah.
Not having a good time. And then they got Eric Robertson, and who had was originally with Sean and Jay Jackson in the Majestics.
Mm.
I think he was 16 or 17. Brilliant, brilliant keyboard player, arranger. Has a very illustrious resume, I must say. And anyway, Eric took over the production duties, musical direction duties the second year, and he hired Sean Jackson and Roy Kenner and Bill Ledster, and Wayne St. John came back, and Lisa Del Bello and Stephanie Taylor. We had and they were like day and night. They were just so supportive and so up, and it was great to go to work every week. It was
I
wonderful.
I think I recognize some of those names, Bill Ledster and uh, Sean Jackson.
Yeah,
Um, now, and you mentioned the other female, Lisa Del Bello. She had
yeah,
her
yeah.
own success as well
Oh
back
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
80s. Yeah.
I like to think that we got her rolling. Let's put it that way.
No, you
Because
certainly.
when she first came to us, I think she was 16, maybe 17, and the producer of the show discovered her and brought her to us, and we featured her one week as a guest, Lisa, and she blew everybody's doors off. And when we got her the second year, she was working in the studio every day. She was working with professionals every day. She was working with la creme de la creme. And so she herself got a lot more confident, and it sort of made her feel um, like she was as good as she was,
Yeah,
you
she
know?
certainly had that eye of the tiger, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
we had the music machine, Keith Hampshire's music machine, and like you say, there were 50 shows and a lot of wonderful guests and so on. And all good things come to an end. Now, years later, there was a call put out for auditions because the Blue Jays in 1983 were really a struggling ball team, weren't they?
Yeah.
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 So now, next thing you know, you're on a call for auditions, and let's hear that story.
Well, I came to a, I'm going to say,
So you're
yes.
called
So,
to audition.
yeah. When the television show ended, and when I came to a point where A&M and I weren't getting along anymore because of creative differences, let's put it that way. I came to a crossroads, and I decided I had to figure out where my future was going to be. And I had a friend of mine who wanted to be my manager, and he was a very, very clever man. And he said, "Okay, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? That sort of thing." And he said, "Oh, well, in that case, you're going to have to put a band together. And of course, we'll put a band together. They'll be the best players in the country." and you'll probably need 8 to 10 guys because your sound is big. So we'll put a band together with 8 to 10 guys, and then we'll rehearse for a month. We'll put a show together. It'll be a killer show, man. It'll be fabulous. So you're gonna have to pay these guys pretty well for that first month. It's coming out of your pocket. And then once the band is put together, he said, and then we'll start promoting and we'll go on the road. And you can, if your record is happening in Regina, I'll book you into the best place in Regina. If your record is happening in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'll book you into the best place in Albuquerque. He said, but plan on being on the road about 46 to 48 weeks of the year. And I said, pardon me? And he said, yeah, that's what you got to do to be where you want to be. So I said, I've got a beautiful wife. I've just had a beautiful son. I bought this beautiful farm in the country. I don't think I want to give that up for that. So I came to a crossroads and I decided I wanted to find something else to do with my time. So I did. I started doing, I did a couple of theatrical productions and I did a couple of television productions. Well, one thing led to another. Next thing you know, I'm one of the gang on Wayne and Schuster's comedy specials, and I'm one of the flunkies or the lackeys. I can't remember. And then I started freelancing, doing radio and television commercials, and pretty well anything to make a buck to feed my family. Pay the rent. And anyway, one day my agent phones me up and said, listen, I got an audition for you. They want a singer. They want you to go in an Eastern Sound studio, such and such a time. And I want you to sing a song about the baseball team. Oh, okay. So I went in, I auditioned. I don't know how many guys auditioned, doesn't matter. They liked what I did. And so we recorded it. And it was originally supposed to be a promotional film for the television show, and and then they cut it up to be a 30-second commercial and a 60-second commercial promotion, and then the longer version. The guys who wrote it, Jack Lenz and Tony Kosanek. There's another guy. Tony was a guest on my show the first year. He had a record out called "All Things Come from God." Great record. Anyway, they decided to press the song as a single and sell it at the baseball games. So OK Blue Jays was sold at the baseball games. And so they paid me X amount of dollars for the first run. And they said, listen, if we sell more than 30,000 copies, we'll give you another batch of money. So that's what happened. And they did. I was reading the paper one day, a few years ago, I guess, and I happened to notice that the Canadian Record Industry Association has just certified OK Blue Jays as certified gold. So I phoned up A&M Records, who were the distributor for the song. I phoned them up and asked them to if I could get a gold record to hang on the wall. And anyway, I after being transferred 4 or 5 times to different departments, finally somebody came on and they went, "Oh, Keith, yeah." I said, "Yeah, I'm the guy that sings the OK Blue Jays song." They went, "Oh, really? It's you?" And I said, "Yeah, it's me." He said, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess we can send you a gold record." I said, "Okay, great." So I gave him my address and stuff. Anyway, about 6 weeks later, somebody comes to the door and he's got a parcel for me. And I go, "Oh, terrific. Thank you. Thank you." And he says, "That'll be $81, please." So anyway, it's framed and it's hanging above my toilet in the bathroom. My wife would, God rest her, she didn't want memorabilia all over the house of different things that I'd done. So that was one thing she would let me hang on, and that was hanging behind the toilet. Yeah.
I love that story. And I kind of relate to like I have things in my office slash studio here hanging up, but there's nothing in my living room. I had a mandolin hanging up down there and that was about it. You know? But
Yeah.
yes, so the Blue Jays, man, all of a sudden, you're getting calls from the CBC and CTV and all the national media again. And what a year they're having. I mean, this is amazing. I think back to Joe Carter, and the team that they had in 92 and 93. Um, how are you feeling about their chances now that
Their
they're
chances? I think their chances are good. Seems to me, if I remember correctly, I think they swept the Dodgers earlier on this year. They were in Los Angeles, and I think they won every game. I'm not sure. I may be wrong, but seems to me they did. So they can be beaten. Um, Now, when it comes to payroll in baseball, I think they pay these guys way too much money. But I think the most expensive team was the New York Mets. Where are they? Holy Lipton, did they waste a lot of money? The number two payroll is the Los Angeles Dodgers. So they've got a mighty big payroll. And I think the Blue Jays are number three or number four. So really, money can buy happiness when it comes to baseball. Now, there are a lot of guys on the team that are making really good bucks, but there are other guys who are not making that good, but they are producing because this is their opportunity to go up the ladder.
are
For example, Nathan Lucas, he's getting, I think he's getting minimum, and he's contributing. They're all contributing, and I think that's the beauty of this team is that each and every one of them is uh, is proving their worth.
I've heard that said many times throughout the season that they're actually a team as a unit. There's not just one single player. I mean, we got. How do you feel about the starter for tonight, Savage?
I think it's I think it's incredible. I hope they don't. I hope they haven't figured him out. I hope the Dodgers. I'm sure they've been doing research and they've been trying to figure out what he's got that's so good, and they're going to tell their guys this is what he's going to do. And I hope that he can be successful because really, I think it's a magical story that this 22-year-old kid who started in at the Vancouver Canadians is now pitching the first game of the World Series the first year. I mean, that's just golden stuff. They should write a movie about this.
Maybe they will. Maybe
Maybe
they
they
will.
will. So
You
I'm
know,
hoping that tonight he has success. Um, you know, that's it. Yeah, they're good top to bottom. They're good top to bottom. They're reliable. Their bullpen is iffy, and that's always been shaky. But Schneider has done his best juggling the boys in the back end. So we'll see what happens.
well, back to the whole team thing. I remember back in the early '90s when they were on that streak and they did the back to back. You could remember names like Juan Guzman, Paul Molitor, Joe Carter, Roberto Alomar, um, and so on. And I think we were kind of in that same kind of position with the players now because everybody is doing what's necessary as a team.
Well, the thing with the Blue Jays is that we are a Canadian team, and our dollar ain't worth what the American dollar's worth, and we are paying these guys in American dollars. So, Mr. Rogers, thank you for stepping up, and he's been stepping up year after year after year with
You know,
these guys
I
for
think
30
about the
years
poor.
now. He's been paying the big bucks, and we've had some pretty good players that didn't pan out, and he's foot the bill all the way. So I thank you, Mr. Rogers. Yeah.
Unlike the poor Leafs fans, there, I can remember hearing that Harold Ballard just decided he didn't have to pay players. because people were showing up in droves at the gardens,
They
regardless of
will.
whether they won or lost. And that was
Exactly.
a team that it still has one of the best records of any NHL team for the number of Stanley Cups they've won, but they haven't done it since 67. And it's because the team just doesn't want to, the management doesn't want to pay, you know?
Well, I don't know.
As you say, we've got Mr. Rogers putting the Bucks in place so that we've got a solid team. I know you've got a lot on your plate, Keith. This has been great fun as always. I want to thank you once again for taking the time out of your day to do this with me. And okay, Blue Jays.
Let's play ball.
Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including recording, editing, guest acquisition, etc. Don't forget to look for the accompanying articles based on these interviews at 519magazine.com. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a clip from my original composition, The Burn, all rights reserved. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to help us keep it going, why don't you click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, cheers.